One great Wednesday. Welcome to King Connections. I'm your host, King, and I'm sitting here with my honor to be sitting here with Kevin Rafferty, my guest for today. And we're going to talk about his thoughts of and his experience as a conscious leader. Welcome to King Connections. Kevin, how you doing today?
Well, thank you, King. It's great to meet you and be here with you. And it's a sunny, perfect day here in Southern California. I'm alive and I get to have the next 30 minutes with you. So, how much better can it be right now?
Well, I'm definitely appreciative of that. One of the questions I love to get started with asking first and foremost is, what is your spiritual energy level? And what I mean by that question is, um, from zero being life sucks to 10 being life is awesome. What do you feel what number would you say you choose that you're feeling right now in this
Yeah,
moment?
right now it's definitely a 10. And at my advanced age, and having learned a few things, it is easier to be between a 9 and a 10 most of the time. The kids are
Absolutely.
grown and life is good and it's a lot simpler now. And I find there's a lot more time for contentment and peace and just some basic joy uh, that I always strove for, trying to get somewhere, be somebody, do things, have things, build a career, build a life, and then realizing that those things were never going to be it. So I get to. One of the things my favorite saying is, I get to do this today. I wake up in the morning.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad you recognize that it's a choice. Like I
Hmm.
tell people all the time, one of my reasons for asking that question when I'm in business meetings that I lead or when I'm doing my presentations at large events or live events, I'm sorry, I ask that question because I want to get assessment of the room. If I get a lot of people who are twos and threes,
Hmm.
then I know it's not going to be a very high energy conversation. It's going to be folks who are negative, adversarial.
Yeah,
And what I tell folks is that what people don't realize, it's a choice,
yeah.
and I see no value in choosing to be a three or a four. I mean, I know life hits you with circumstances and challenges which you may feel like you want to be a three or four, but to your point, I always choose to be a 10 because I feel great at the end of the day. I feel grateful. And that to me is kind of helps set the tone of how my day is. And I've learned what attracts my energy I give off and what I attract into my life as well.
I think you make a great point. It's life is going to throw curveballs at us. Even the Dalai Lama and the Buddha had their bad moments, maybe some bad days,
Hmm.
and yet when they were able to bring their consciousness back to the present rather than getting lost in some other snarls of the past, uh, you can actually then realize you're in this place and you can choose to come out of it. And
Absolutely.
whether you go to a 10 and or go to from a 4 to a 6 to a 6 to an 8 to an 8 to a 9, it's a choice. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, my next question is really one of my favorite questions because I think it sets the context really for the interview. That is, what do you see your purpose in life? What do you see as your purpose in life?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I luckily I came across it because I was seeking it for many years, but it really hit me in the head about I guess about 12 years ago when I wrote my book. Well, what is it I'm trying to do with this book? And then the purposelessness of my life became clear. I'm trying to help people awaken to what I call their true authentic being, their true authentic self.
Hmm.
Um, and then, so everything about me, everything about my work, even the name of my business, my business is called Business Frontiers because it was always the next frontier of business is raising our consciousness. It's not about making more money or working harder or trying to squeeze more through uh, smaller and smaller orifices, if you will. It's about how do we actually become who we really truly are, and in that process, you have to realize who you have been and what part is really true for you and what parts are not true and be able to let the parts that are not true go. So that's where uh, my whole life was building to that point, and then ever since then in my work, it's been around that. So this is a conversation about being conscious, about being present, about being in this moment, being real. And those are the only kind of conversations I want to have. Those are the only kind of relationships I want to be around. People who are willing, and if they can't, they know that there's an aspect within them because they see it. They see the loving, they see the creative, they see the compassionate, they see the kind person leader that's in there from time to time. But our past programming gets us, keeps us off base. And so that's been my work is really the realization of my life's work. So it's easy to remember it when you own it, when you are it. You don't have to like own that. What was that cool tagline I came at? I put it on LinkedIn last week. I don't have to. I used to be that guy, trying to wordsmith myself into some type of better place. But just being the just being more grounded, I think, is easier to be that
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that way too, because it reminds me of a time where it was a lecture that Dr. Wayne Dyer had talked about, and he talked
way.
about that Gandhi had given to the English Parliament, and he had spoken for like 3 hours, and he didn't have any notes. And one of the English gentlemen had talked to one of Gandhi's aides and asked him, he said, "How is he able to speak for such a long time without any notes? That's incredible." He says, "Because what Gandhi believes and what he says is one. So he's not remembering, he's living it. He's just
Yeah.
sharing it, right?" So to your point, I see so many people who I know who adopt this conscious moniker to put on their tagline and their
Hmm.
description because it's a new buzzword. But and of course, we can read a profile, and that's why I really do these podcasts. It's because I can read your profile like I can read a resume, and you have all the right wording there, but this gives me an opportunity to see if you really live in that consciousness or you really are that consciously that you say that you are. And so, with that being said, my next question would be, how do you define a conscious leader?
Oh, one of my favorite questions, and I think what's become clear for me over the years is how I've used the term self-aware. How self-aware is a man or a woman just in their own skin? you know, so much about becoming a leader, a business person, is all the exterior things. We go to school, we learn subjects, we learn strategy, marketing, finance, all of those things. We go out in the world and we learn how to make it all work. It's all exterior. But who's doing the interior work of seeing who you truly are? Because as we get older and we go out into the world, we take on personas. I like to call it, we go from, when we were younger, we're more authentic, and then we learn how to pretend our way into adulthood. And a conscious person is someone who is shifting their whole being from being that pretender, being in pretense, I call it, to presence.
Hmm.
So self-awareness, King, is probably, how much time have they taken to do some deeper reflection and connection to their own mental, emotional, spiritual states within them? How tapped into their own human side, you know, how much compassion, empathy for others they have and for themselves.
Hmm.
Um, how much are they able to see that they're not this ego that they've developed really well, but there are other parts to themselves that are the parts where they would rather be,
Hmm.
except when they have to go out into the world and then become or be something else that's not their nature. So people who understand that dynamic within themselves and within human nature, um, and I'm encouraged because I'm seeing more and more people who are looking around at the world that we've inherited and going, geez, this is not so great. We got a lot of really nice, cool looking things, and there's some, beautiful, like, shiny objects and big buildings and lots of money and things. But internally, am I any happier? Am I any more fulfilled?
Right.
So that self awareness and what kind of internal looking up under one's hood are you doing?
Hmm.
Or is it just a mental exercise? There's a lot of brilliant people out there that are using the word conscious because they see it as the next step in business, going from autocrats to authoritarians to the entrepreneur, monetary financial model to now this next step. Those are all logical steps, but I think a conscious leader is even further beyond that, who
Hmm.
can actually get outside of just trying to become more successful in this world. Once you look at, well, how can you become more grounded internally? And let's have those conversations. And if you're a leader and you're doing the work, what an impact you have when you start clearing out your closet and you start to really see who you really are, and then you walk into your office or your factory or your place of business that way, more present, more connected to your people,
Hmm.
and that's when you see all the lights turn on and the energy comes alive. And it's not like this ego boss trying to make all the right decisions and make all the decisions actually, and have it all be about him or her. But they're the conscious leader is actually somebody who's there to help other people become more of who they are, and so that if it's the right fit for them to be in that organization, to take the shackles off so that they can go and participate as fully as they possibly can. So that might be a little bit of a long answer, but self-awareness is the key, is to be able to start realizing. And I realized at a young age that I had to stop drinking the dogma of all the
Hmm.
religions and the politics and the stuff my adults were telling me I
Hmm.
should do, and I had to start learning how to think for myself. And then being careful, that is that the ego that's doing the thinking, or is that the authentic Kevin doing the thinking? That's always been an interesting challenge.
Right.
Hmm.
Right. Well, I love your answer on that. And these conversations really give me a chance to really learn a lot about an individual. And even though people may have not the exact same answer, but it's similar in the context of, you know, it comes from a place of them being conscious, because we all understand what conscious means from a
Hmm.
Webster's definition context. But
Right.
as you say, it's being aware of your thoughts and your actions and your behaviors and the impact that it has on others and things of that nature. Um,
Mhm.
my next question would be, what are you most grateful for of all the things you've accomplished in your life? Or
Ah, you got good questions, dude. I would, gratitude is an important part that helped me kind of get myself grounded. So gratitude is something I do just about every day. I think the answer to this percolating in here would be that I've lived long enough to have gotten, and I went through all of the growing pains of regular being a regular human being on the planet, and I got to have some early experiences as a young man in leadership and business roles. But I think I'm most grateful that I'm here today, that I've been able to learn from all of that past, and I'm still encouraged about the human race, even though there's a lot of darkness and a lot of things that are going on that none of us would probably really want on any of our days.
yes,
But I'm here. I'm still here, and if I can be of any service or if I can be of any help, I'm just grateful for that every day.
excellent, excellent. Now, as we shift into a kind of a business question, I know your business, the Business Frontiers, is
Hmm.
your business you founded. What is the mission of the Business Frontiers?
It's the same as my personal one. I think it's my ability to do my coaching. It's the business part of taking Kevin the coach out to the world. So,
Mm,
uh, and coaching can also include consulting. I've done facilitating. I'm a peer group leader. I've been in a thing called Vistage, many years ago, and I still facilitate a group of CEOs who are looking at becoming more conscious and taking that into their businesses on a day-to-day basis. And I've been facilitating those folks for over 15 years now.
mm,
So the business is actually just how Kevin goes about the plan, but basically it takes the whole idea of how I can help, and through me and my contacts. It's not just me. I've got, like you, I've got other contacts that I can tap into and use, and we can collaborate to help people, um, whatever's needed to help business leaders basically awaken to their authentic selves and to build authentic, conscious businesses. So that would be the answer for my company.
Excellent. You just kind of alluded to my next question a little bit. Can you describe how you help some of the leaders awaken and
Mhm.
realize their true authentic nature? And before you do that, just let me ask this as a second part to that. Are a lot of those leaders, I would say, for lack of a better term, unconscious when you work with them?
So, King, I will say that all of us have some level of unconsciousness that's still kind of hovering around. We have some shadows in the basement, or some limiting beliefs, or some hidden commitments that prevent us from fully being alive. So I think the challenge for me, and I think a lot of my peers who are also trying to coach more conscious people, is finding people who are a bit self-aware, to realize that, especially they're realizing their current leadership style isn't. They're getting some pushback from people, and there are more and more people now that are pushing back toward leaders than ever before.
Hmm,
20 years ago, you still had to sit on your hands and keep your mouth shut,
hmm,
when the boss was doing a tirade or two. Now we have other mechanisms and ways to be able to speak out on that, against that kind of unconscious leadership style. Unfortunately, I look at statistics of how many people are actually having coaches, and how many clients other institutions have that are in the business of coaching people from a conscious standpoint. It's in the single digits,
hmm,
and it might even be in the lower single digits still. Um, and so we're on a trajectory up, but we started from a place where there were not a lot of people who were actually at what I would call a conscious business level, where they understood that it was not just about making money anymore. And I think that's really the threshold that one can get to. If you can realize we do live in a world, it's all money centric. And yes, it's the quarterly annual returns, and it's the ROIs, and it's the profitability. I get all that. And I'm not here to slam money or profitability or anything. But if you think that's the only focus that your job is as a leader, it's actually the reason why we, for the last 40, 50 years, since Gallup has been tracking um, employee engagement at work, that we have barely moved the needle to having more and more people engaged at work. 40 years ago, it was 30% were considered engaged. Now it's 33%.
hmm.
After all of this leadership training and development, and all these business schools and everything else, people still don't want to work where they're at. Why? The level of unconscious leaders that are out there. If you
Hmm.
really want to know the number one reason why people leave their job, it's because their relationship with their boss.
Yes.
And so that tells you that we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm still encouraged that, because people will come to me who realize, either they come to me for two ways. Either it's the CEO or the owner, and they're realizing that they're hitting their head against the wall, and they're not moving. The turnover's still there. They're just not feeling like they're getting it. And they're starting to, maybe they pick up the book Conscious Capitalism, and they've read a book from Raj Sisodi or somebody out there that's already doing a lot of writing on this subject, and it resonates, and they want to do that. They don't know how.
Hmm,
That's the number one kind. The other kind is the kind that's the next generation to the CEO, the up and comers, and I get asked by the CEO or the board to coach them.
hmm,
Those, I only work with people that want to be coached, because a lot of times if the CEO says, "I think you need coaching,"
hmm.
they want me to fix them. And I don't walk on water that way. I can't do that. So I don't
Yes.
work with those kind of people unless there's a real yearn for them to help, for me to help them find their own. So it's not for me to tell them what it is. So, you know, I work with people who are open minded, who are curious, lifelong learners,
Hmm.
um, people who can take feedback, people who can be honest about themselves. And in a coaching environment, it's just me and him or her. And my job is to build that safety and trust
Hmm.
so that they can go and explore who they are. And my job is not to have the answers, but my job might be to have some questions
Hmm.
that help them do the exploration. And I was lucky enough to have coaches myself and people like you mentioned Wayne Dyer, and there's a whole bunch of other teachers that I've had in my life that have raised those questions for me and made me find my own way. So that's the nut basically of that conscious coaching component that I do.
Excellent, excellent. You said a lot of great information there, and it reminds me of a time I heard Phil Jackson referred to uh, one of his players. He didn't say it by name because he didn't want to disparage anybody else, but he said that one of the things I really loved about this player was that he was coachable.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
as you said, having someone who's ready to realize I want to make a change in my life, or I'm open to learning new insights, new ways of doing things. I think that's critical and key.
And I think yeah, I'll use Tiger Woods as a beautiful current example. Uh, the greatest golfer, maybe by all standards, except of course for my hero Jack Nicklaus. Um, Tiger has numerous coaches.
Hmm.
You might think, well, why the heck does that guy need coaches?
Yes,
Because he doesn't know, he can't see himself in
correct.
all of all the angles of who he is. So he has somebody that can hold a mirror on this end, somebody who can say, look, your swing on that part's not good, or hey, here's some nutritional things you might not think of, or some physical therapy things that now that we've got to include. And he's open to that. He's
Hmm.
coachable.
Hmm.
That's how you become great, I think, is if you're open to being coachable. So it's a great quote on that, King. So thanks for sharing that one. I forgot about that
No, absolutely. That's the purpose of podcast. We can build and grow,
one.
and something organic comes from these conversations. And which leads to my next question. And I want to kind of frame the context. So we talked about conscious leadership before, and like I said, that term conscious gets thrown around quite a bit
Yeah.
in our world today. So for me, I wanted to define it for myself.
Hmm.
Um, and I came up with 8 key characteristics that I define that I hope not that I live, but I'm hold as my true north. That
Okay.
this is where I want to be and want to be known for. And
Mm.
that is number one, being a person who is principle centered. Number two, being value driven. Three, being action oriented. Four, being results focused. Five, being growth minded. Six, being servant leader. Seven, being accountability acceptor. Then eight, being a grateful spirit.
Mm.
So for me, I want to, those are the 8 virtues that I want to have and be known. But by the same token, I kind of look for those in the people I connect with as well.
Mm.
Not that they have to have all 8, but I think probably the growth minded part is the most important one because I believe if they have a growth minded, the others can come into play.
You
And
bet.
so my question for you would be when you're building new connections or looking to connect with individuals, do you have any key characteristics that you look to connect with people that they must have or that's important for you?
You know, King, I hang my hat in my being on the word presence nowadays. And
Hmm.
what I mean by that is, does someone have that genuineness
Hmm.
about them where there's no, again, there's no pretending, there's no facading, there's no ego that walks in the room before them. Um, they're vulnerable, they're open, they're curious, they're interested. Um, when they meet you, they want to know about you. It's not about them. Um, and it's funny. I think I have a gift of being able to, by basically asking a question or two of someone, to let them have that ability to walk through that door of being real and being present and being authentic with me. Can they do that, or can they not?
Hmm.
And you know, I've gotten a pretty good sense about if someone is still stuck in their ego, then I let them go. It's like, it's okay. I'm not going to change you. I'm not here to change anybody. I'm just, let me see where you want to show up. And
Hmm.
if you're somebody that like this conversation, you and I we didn't know each other before this.
Correct.
And we're just starting to begin to get into the good stuff here
Yes.
because that affinity, and you have a sense about that. I know you do because I have that too. And it's a feel, it's a sense. But you also then, I also make sure that I give them every chance for me to get to know them a little bit. So, and I've also, I've realized that most people, I will not work with. I will not be friends with, and I will not hang with, and that's okay. I don't make them bad or wrong, or
Hmm.
me better or superior.
Hmm.
It's just, there are some people you resonate with, and some that you don't, and it's okay. And it's
Absolutely. Speaking of which, that's an excellent segue into my next question, which is my company is King Connections, and I'm really big on building connections and understanding human behaviors, and I've created, a methodology for connecting with folks.
mhm.
So my question would be, who would be a great connection for you?
A great connection for being a friend, being in business, being a collaborator.
However you feel, however your spirit takes you
I
to
like
answer.
I like being a friend first. And I have in my, I guess you call it my business model. I don't actually look to make any money or charge anybody money until I actually really see that there's really this opportunity and that they have the means to do it. I do more coaching gratis, I think, than I do paid these days. So,
Mm,
but it's really about, I want that. I want to meet with someone who's welcoming and friendly and open and willing to share like I am. And
yes,
so those are the connections that I crave, that I would always be open to.
it's a great answer. It's interesting that you say that because again, I'm in the same alignment. Whereas, um, I believe the days are gone where you're, especially as a consultant, and you're conscious of being aware of being value creation. I want to create value. I can't create value if it's our first time we meet and I'm trying to close you on that first meeting, right? I need to learn, what your habits are, what your interests are, what your pain points are, right? And even to the point where you are willing to share that with me requires a level of trust that you have to extend to me. You're not going to just share a very pain point with somebody you just met, right?
Exactly. Well, I think you just said the key word, trust. If you do enough work and if you really have been able to let go, the things that really are untrue for you, and you've gotten some level of comfort in your own skin, there's a field around you that when you show up, you bring that with you.
Mm,
I know that when I meet someone like with you, I could sense it, and it's like, okay, now I want to get closer. And so, you said the word connection earlier, and I think really what I'm looking for is that real authentic connection,
mm,
and I think all of us do.
yes,
And so, can I provide that for someone else? And are they willing to reciprocate in some way that makes it a wonderful uh, exchange of energy here? I think that's really the important. I mean, there isn't a human being on the planet that doesn't want connection.
absolutely.
So how can you and I, just by showing up, give them a little bit of connection? But I don't know what greater gift we can give somebody that we don't know, or even an old friend that you do know, is that sense of loving and caring and kind connection. If that's
Yeah,
all you did, wouldn't life be? Wouldn't it be great to live in a conscious world that way?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. You know, um, Now my next question would be for you is that, and in your LinkedIn profile, obviously, you've accomplished quite a bit. You have a lot of things to be um, satisfied with, things to be proud of. But of all the things you've accomplished, is there one thing that you would say you've accomplished that has been the most rewarding for you?
I think, and I alluded to earlier, there's a group of CEOs that I've been with now for 15 years, and I've been able to, we've all grown together, by the way. I got in to a peer group with them as their coach and facilitator. But I was also in the middle of the deepest dive in my own personal evolution, and uh, and so uh, we've all become very, very close because I was able to set a container for this trust and safety so that they could start peeling their shields off and their personas and start really getting into it. And be able to watch them become just the most beautiful human beings and watch what they did to their companies.
Mm,
I mean, I can even get a little bit, it's like they've all taken that into their businesses. Now,
mm,
have they converted their businesses to conscious businesses? Well, maybe to some degree, yeah, but their impact has significantly changed um, everything in in their companies. Their turnovers are down.
mm,
They hire the best people. They overpay everybody. They love going to work. Their people seem to love going to work. They do all these really cool things, and every single one of them are more profitable than their competitors are, who are out there trying to, bang heads the old way. And
mm,
so that is extremely gratifying to watch how maybe I had a little pinky involved in that, to them watch them become more of themselves, become more confident and competent in that authenticity, that they could actually do that at work, and then their home lives with their wives or husbands and relationships with their children are just so much better now. It's been a gift to be able to be in the back seat of their cars all these
mm.
years and watch them become who and they're not done. We're all in our 60s, and well, there's one in their mid 50s, but we're all in that same age group here. Now we're starting to ask questions. Okay, we've been successful in business and blah blah blah. Now what do we do with the rest of our lives? We still got all this energy left. Maybe
Mhm.
we can do something that's beyond the business, or maybe a higher level of business. So that's our current level of conversation. So that's what I'm real grateful
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I like the analogy you use of being in the back seat,
of.
and watching, and being a part of their journey, part of their ride.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my next question is, and I'll set the context for you. It's one of my favorite questions to ask individuals because it just kind of lets me know what people think. Um, that is there a king connection that you would like to meet? And what I mean when I say king connection, I'm not planning on my name or my company. It's an individual who, because of their financial success, their social capital, their credibility, their stature, that you admire, and you know that if you were to get connected with them, and then more importantly, they add you to their inner circle, that it would change your life. It would grow your business exponentially, but it would have a huge impact. And for me, like an example would be Magic Johnson is that person for myself, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When he smiles, he brights up a room. He's known for his smile. It attracts people. He's known as a very successful businessman, a very giving business person, real estate mogul, and then more importantly, for me, you can fill the role of a coach, advisor, mentor, and multiple, facets. And then lastly, what I do is I create a methodology, a plan for how to go about making that connection, because I don't want to meet Magic as a fan and he's here leverage wise and I'm here and I don't bring any value to him. He just has to be grateful enough, humble enough to give me a moment. I want to bring value to him and him see me as someone that can solve a pain point in his life.
Mm-hmm.
So now with that being said, who
Mm-hmm.
would you say would be a king connection for you?
Oh my goodness. Well, if I had to name somebody by name that would give you an example of the kind of person, Richard Branson came to mind.
Hmm.
Um, the challenge with men and women who have an opportunity to grow businesses like he has is to actually, and I don't know Richard personally at all, but I just kind of watched and listened to him. I think there's a man who's had a lot of self reflection. There's a lot of, he's seen his darker sides, and he's been able to get through it. Is he perfect? By all means, no.
Right.
But he seems to run some pretty powerfully interesting companies. And the challenge with someone like him is he's getting older now, and he's not going to be around forever. And transition to who's going to take over the reins. And how do you transition if you're at a conscious level here? How do you not transition so that it doesn't take a dip?
Mm.
That to me is what about culture, creating a conscious leadership team and a conscious culture. That's brings me alive. I would love to meet people who are in those spots where they're ready to either start something new, they're in transition of what they've already built, um, who know that it's all about leadership. It's all about the kind of leadership, the quality of that consciousness of the leadership, and how can we help, not only keep what's been built, but then take it to a higher level, and have that be their legacy.
Yes.
That they started something, and then they allowed it. They were the fertilizer for it to go even beyond where they were. And
Yes.
so those are the kind of men and women, King, that light my candle. I love those conversations with them all.
Excellent. Excellent. Then my last question would be, and I think this question really, I believe you can learn a lot from a person by you walk in the house, you walk in the office, you look at the books they're reading, or maybe the lack of books they have.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you as an author, so I'd be curious to know what book would you recommend to our listening audience that's a great book that has had a personal impact on your life, or just
Mm-hmm.
what your spirit tells you right now, which you might want to share.
Can I give you three real quickly?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
Not necessarily in the order of how I found them, but there's a book called Leadership and Self Deception
Mm,
by what's called the Arbinger Institute. It's more like one of these narrative books, like Lencioni writes. It's a storyline that they try to make a point. The title says it all: self deception. We're all in some level of self deception. I call it pretense. They call it self deception. And how do you evolve yourself through that? And it's just a wonderful book for storytelling. Um, Lee Thayer is a gentleman that I came across 15 years ago. His book, Leadership: Thinking, Being, and Then Doing,
mm,
and it helps you do your own deep dive, in his
mm,
pages. And then another one that came out, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership by Jim Detmer and Diane Chapman. And
mm,
if you don't do anything, don't buy the book. Just go on their LinkedIn and follow them. They have these most wonderful posts almost daily on LinkedIn about little nuggets about what they call being below the line of unconsciousness
mm,
and being above the line of being more conscious.
mm,
It's a very simple model. Are you above or below? In this moment right now, are you above or below? And you know
mm.
when you're below and you know when you're above. If you want to lie to yourself, go ahead. But it's like they've got these really useful tools, which I'm loving because we humans need to have those kind of tools. So those would be three off the top, plus my book too. Wake up, get real, be happy, becoming your authentic self. So there you go for the last plug.
I love all those choices. Thank you for that. And as we wrap up, is there any closing words you want to share in addition to your contact information for our listening audience so they can get in contact with you as well?
I think people need to pay attention to who this Christopher King is a little bit more.
Mm,
I'm
thank you.
delighted that we found each other, or you found me, or what, however that worked. But just by being with you now for the last half hour, keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing a wonderful service, and I'm now one of your newest fans.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. I definitely intend to be a reader of your book, and I look forward to the infinite possibilities that our connection can yield.
As I do too, King. It's wonderful to have been here with you today. Thank you for inviting me.
Same here. Again, this has been King Connections. This is Kevin Rafferty. Thank you all for listening.